Part 1. The carpet was so close to my face that I could see every little thread woven into it. Tiny specks of dust clung to the fibers. The air under the bed was warm, cramped, and smelled faintly of wood polish and cologne. My knees were pulled tight to my chest. My back ached. My breathing was so shallow it almost hurt. I lay there like a little boy hiding during a game, except this was no game anymore. Then the hotel room door opened. 2 pairs of shoes stepped inside, slow and relaxed. The kind of footsteps people make when they believe they are safe. When they think no one is watching, no one is listening, no one could possibly ruin the moment they've been waiting for. At first, my heart leaped with excitement, because this had been my idea. It was the night before my wedding in Lagos, and I wanted to prank my family. I thought it would be harmless, funny even. I had told everyone I wanted a quiet night alone at the hotel before the ceremony, the way many grooms do. I acted tired. I yawned on purpose. I told them I needed rest. Then I came into the room, turned off the lights, waited, and slid under the bed. I wanted to hear what they really said when they thought I wasn't there. I imagined I'd crawl out laughing after a few minutes, shocking them all, making them admit the sweet or ridiculous things they said behind my back. I thought maybe my sister would cry and say she was proud of me. I thought maybe my brothers would tease me about marriage. I thought maybe I'd hear love. Instead, the first sentence I heard sent a chill through my entire body. Tomorrow, everything changes. That was Ronald's voice, my younger brother. The same Ronald who hugged me the hardest in public. The same Ronald who told people I was the best man he knew. The same Ronald who looked me in the eye and said over and over, "Big brother, without you, none of us would be here." A second voice answered with a low laugh. Albert, my other brother. The one who always called me big man in that warm, familiar way. The one who praised my kindness in front of strangers like my goodness was a family treasure. I heard a chair creak. One of them sat down. The other moved closer to the bed, too close. Then he stopped and let out a tired little sigh, the kind a man makes when he's done pretending. "What time will our wallet finally sleep?" Albert asked. Wallet. Not brother, not Oscar, not groom. Wallet. Ronald gave a short laugh. Sleep? Oscar thinks tomorrow is a fairy tale. He thinks love changes people. He thinks marriage means peace. My fingers dug into the carpet. Every word hit me like something physical. It was not just what they said, it was how easily they said it. No hesitation, no guilt, no softness. They were talking about me like I wasn't a person at all, like I was an account, a resource, a soft, useful machine that had spent years giving and giving until nobody remembered I had a heart inside me. Albert lowered his voice. "Just make sure the papers are ready. Once he signs after the wedding, the accounts get shared exactly the way we planned." Ronald chuckled again. "He'll sign. He always signs. That's his problem. He trusts us with his whole heart." And the worst part was, he was right. I had trusted them. I had trusted all of them so deeply that it never occurred to me I might need protection from my own blood. As I lay there under that bed, memories flashed through my mind so fast they almost hurt. The house I bought for my mother because I wanted her to rest. The school fees I paid for cousins I barely knew because family is family. The failed business I funded for Albert. Then the second business I funded for Albert after the first one collapsed. The car I gave my sister Rebecca because she had been caring for my 2 boys while I worked long days and even longer nights. The monthly allowances, the medical bills, the rent, the groceries, the emergencies. Every time someone called, I answered. Not because I was weak, because I believed that was love. And maybe that had always been my blind spot. If you're already feeling where this is going, do me a quick favor right here. Like the video and subscribe to the channel, because this story only gets darker from here. And trust me, you're going to want to stay until the very last minute. Under that bed, I kept listening. I didn't move. I barely blinked. My 2 sons came to mind next. The center of my life. The reason I kept pushing even when I had nothing left in me. After my first marriage ended, those boys became my world. Their mother and I had once loved each other, but over time our home turned into a battlefield. Too many arguments, too much tension, too many words said in anger that could never be taken back. Peace disappeared from that marriage long before we admitted it. In the end, I walked away because I didn't want my children growing up inside constant conflict. I didn't want them learning that love meant shouting, suspicion, pain, and emotional bruises nobody else could see. I chose distance over destruction. I chose calm over chaos. I chose to leave before we broke each other completely. And when I left, I did not disappear. I did not abandon my boys. If anything, I became even more responsible. I tried to be father and mother in one body. I worked harder. I gave more. I carried more. I kept telling myself that sacrifice was noble, that maybe one day all that goodness would come back around. Then I met Vivian. Vivian did not chase me. She didn't flatter me. She didn't act dazzled by my money. And that alone made her different from almost everyone who entered my life. She had her own life, her own mind, her own strength. The first time we had a real conversation, she asked about my boys before she asked about my businesses. She asked what made them laugh. She asked what they were afraid of. She asked whether they were adjusting well after the divorce. That shook me, because so many people see a successful man and stop there. They see the money first, the image second, and maybe the human being last. But Vivian looked at me like she saw the tiredness in my chest, the caution in my silence, the loneliness I carried around like a private wound. My family never liked her. Not openly. Not in a way you could point to and prove. They smiled. They greeted her. They acted respectful. But I noticed the little things I had ignored at the time. Rebecca would delay returning her calls. Ronald would say things like, "We just want to protect you, Oscar." Albert would lean in with concern on his face and warn me about women who come into a man's life when that man has already built something. They kept bringing up my first marriage like it was a prophecy hanging over me. Like happiness was something I was no longer allowed to try for. At first, I believed they were worried about me. Now, under that bed, I was hearing the truth. Albert said, "If he marries her, the spending changes. She'll start asking questions. She'll look at the numbers." Ronald clicked his tongue. "Exactly. That's why she must never feel too comfortable." There was a short silence after that. Then Ronald lowered his voice the way people do when they're about to say something poisonous and enjoy watching it spread. "We'll handle this the same way we handled the last one." My whole body went cold. The last one. My ex-wife. The marriage that slowly became unbearable. The marriage full of random arguments, misunderstandings that made no sense, sudden accusations, strange tension that seemed to come from nowhere. There had been so many moments in that marriage when I felt like someone was pouring fuel on every small disagreement, turning sparks into fires. I swallowed hard under the bed. Albert asked, "You really think he never suspected?" Ronald laughed, But there was no joy in it, only arrogance. Suspected what? That we were the ones feeding her lies? That we were the ones stirring things up? That we were collecting from both sides while they were tearing each other apart? For a second, I couldn't think. My ears rang. The room seemed to tilt even though I hadn't moved an inch. Albert exhaled slowly. Oscar is too soft. He wants peace so badly that he never notices who's stealing it from him. Exactly, Ronald said. And Vivian is even more dangerous. Calm women are dangerous. Calm women watch quietly. Calm women notice patterns. Calm women find the truth. Something in me began to break. Not loudly, not dramatically. Quietly. Like glass cracking beneath pressure that had been building for years. Then Albert shifted closer to the bed again, and my heart started pounding so hard I was certain they would hear it. And those boys, he said. My throat tightened instantly. My sons. Ronald answered in a careless voice that made me hate him in a way I had never hated anyone. Forget the boys. Once Oscar signs, we control everything. And if Vivian tries to get smart, we remind Oscar of what we reminded him before. Albert paused. The secret? Yes, Ronald whispered. The one that will ruin him if it ever comes out. My entire body turned to ice. Secret? What secret? What could possibly ruin me so badly that they were confident it would keep me obedient? I pressed my hand over my mouth to stop any sound from escaping me. I could feel sweat gathering at my temples. The air under the bed seemed thinner by the second. Albert said, "Say it. I want to hear it again." Ronald took his time. He enjoyed drama. He always had. Even as a child, he liked holding information just long enough to make everyone lean in closer. Then, very softly, like a man dropping a stone into a deep well and waiting to hear how far it falls, he said, "Oscar isn't even sure he's raising his own child." For a second, my brain refused to process the sentence. I forgot where I was. I forgot there was a wedding the next day. I forgot I was under a hotel bed in Lagos, listening to my brothers speak like snakes wearing human skin. All I could think was, what did he mean? Which child? Was he lying? Was he talking about one of my boys? Was this true? Was this another manipulation? My fingers shook violently. I bit down on my lips so hard I tasted blood. Albert muttered, "If he ever finds out the full truth, he'll collapse." Ronald answered, "That's exactly why he won't. A good man will do almost anything when you hold his heart in your hand." Good man. I used to be proud when people called me that. Lying under that bed, I realized something terrible. In the wrong hands, goodness becomes a weapon used against you. And these men, my brothers, had been using mine for years. They didn't sound like family anymore. They sounded like invaders who had lived inside my life for so long that I had started calling them home. Albert asked, "So what's the plan after the wedding?" Ronald didn't hesitate. "Vivian signs too. If she refuses, we create a problem. We push Oscar to doubt her. We make him remember pain. We make him choose blood over love." "And if he doesn't bend?" "He will," Ronald said. "He always bends." That line stayed with me. He always bends. That was how they saw me. Not as the head of the family, not as the successful man everyone praised, not as the one holding things together. Just a soft target with a familiar face, a provider, a shield, a wallet. A man trained by love and guilt to sacrifice himself until nothing was left but usefulness. Then Ronald said the sentence that changed everything. Because tomorrow night, Vivian won't be safe if she doesn't cooperate. My eyes flew open in the dark. Not safe? Albert hesitated. Are you saying we should? Ronald cut him off. Calm, cold, controlled. I'm saying we already started. Something small rolled across the floor and stopped right beside my cheek. I stared at it. A tiny envelope. Vivian's name was written on it, and I knew that handwriting. It wasn't Ronald's. It wasn't Albert's. It was Rebecca's. My sister. The same sister I trusted with my children. The same sister I had defended countless times. The same sister who spoke softly, smiled warmly, and loved to say she wanted peace in the family. Then the mattress above me shifted. My heart nearly exploded. Someone leaned down. The bed dipped slightly, and suddenly I knew, if one of them got curious enough to crouch and look underneath, everything would end right there. I flattened my body against the floor so hard my ribs hurt. My eyes locked on the envelope. My mind was screaming for me to grab it, hide it, do something, anything. But fear kept me frozen. Albert straightened first. I thought I heard something. Ronald replied, You're imagining things. Oscar is not the kind of man who hides under beds. If I had not been terrified, I might have laughed. Albert moved away toward the window. Rebecca says Vivian notices too much. That's why Rebecca is handling her, Ronald said. Woman to woman. Smiles, concern, fake advice. It works faster. My chest felt so tight I thought I might black out. They had done this before. That was the horrifying part. Not just one lie, not one bad decision. This was a system, a pattern, a family machine built around manipulation, guilt, fear, and access to my money. Albert said, What if Oscar changes after the wedding? Some men grow a spine when love gets real. Ronald laughed again. Not Oscar. He feels guilty about everything. His failed marriage, the boys, his past, his work. Guilt is his weakness. And again, I hated how accurate he was. I had spent years trying to be good enough for everyone. Good enough as a father. Good enough as a brother. Good enough as a son. Good enough as a man who survived a broken marriage and still believed in love. I had carried guilt for things that were not even mine to carry, and somewhere along the way, I forgot to ask a simple question. Who protects the protector? Albert's voice lowered. But that's secret. Are we certain? Ronald answered immediately. I saw the hospital file myself. Rebecca kept it. She used it to control him during the first marriage. That's why his wife always accused him. That's why she always started fights. The room began spinning again. Hospital file. Control. Fights. That meant the collapse of my first marriage might not have been just two broken people failing each other. It might have been engineered, nudged, fed, poisoned from the outside by the very people I trusted most. Albert sounded uneasy now. If the truth ever comes out, it'll destroy him. Ronald answered, We don't want the truth out. We just want him obedient. I shut my eyes. All those nights I sat alone wondering what I had done wrong. All those times I blamed myself. All those apologies I made. All those moments I questioned my own judgment. They were not accidents. They were arranged. And if you've ever seen a story where betrayal comes dressed like love, then right now you already know this is bigger than money. So take 2 seconds, hit like, subscribe, and stay with me, because what happened next is where the game truly began. Albert walked toward the small table and picked up a bottle of water. And the boys? They're growing. Children notice things. There was a pause. Then Ronald said, "If Oscar starts suspecting us, we turn the boys against Vivian. We make her look dangerous. He'll choose them over her." That was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Using me was one thing. Using my children was another. The 2 men I had helped raise, helped feed, helped rescue from their own bad choices were casually discussing my sons like pieces on a chessboard. Not children, not little hearts, not my boys. Pieces. Albert drank some water. "You think he really loves her that much?" "Enough to make mistakes," Ronald said. "Enough to sign without reading if we push the right emotional button." The confidence in his voice told me this wasn't guesswork. It was experience. Practice. They had studied me, mapped me, learned every trigger, every soft place, every old wound. "Tomorrow is the wedding," Albert said. "Exactly," Ronald replied. "Tonight is the last free night. After tomorrow, everything belongs to the family again." Family. I almost choked on that word. Eventually they moved toward the door, and for a moment I thought it was over. Their footsteps shifted. The handle turned. Then Ronald stopped. "Wait." My entire body went rigid. Albert asked, "What now?" Ronald's footsteps came back. Slow. Measured. Closer. "Something feels off," he said. I stopped breathing entirely. Albert sounded irritated. "You're paranoid." Ronald bent down slightly. I could see the shadow of his legs across the carpet. He reached toward the floor and picked up the envelope. "Vivian's name," he muttered. "Rebecca said she left this in the car." Silence. Heavy silence. My pulse hammered in my ears. Albert said carefully, "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" Ronald crouched. The space under the bed darkened with his shadow. I shut my eyes, ready for the moment everything would blow apart. Then his phone rang. Loud, sharp, sudden. Ronald cursed under his breath and stood up quickly. "Rebecca," he answered. "What?" I couldn't hear every word, but I heard enough. "What do you mean Oscar isn't answering? You checked his room?" His face changed. Even from down there, I could hear it in his voice. Albert stepped closer. "What happened?" Ronald ended the call and said, "He's not picking up, and Rebecca says his phone is off." Albert said, "But we're in his room." Ronald looked around. Then he laughed, a slow, dangerous laugh that made my skin crawl. And then, to my horror, he dropped to his knees. His face came lower and lower, closer to the floor, scanning the darkness under the bed. Time slowed. I could hear the air conditioner humming. I could hear fabric shifting. I could hear Albert swallow. I was certain my life was about to split into before and after. Then Albert laughed. A quick, dismissive laugh. "Ronald, get up. You're taking this too far. Oscar wouldn't hide in his own hotel room. If he's not here, he's probably downstairs at the bar pretending to think deep thoughts before marriage." Ronald stayed there for a second longer. Then, finally, he stood. He brushed off his trousers and muttered, "You're right. I'm overthinking." Overthinking. That word saved me. Albert pulled out his phone. "I'll tell Rebecca I'm checking the bar. If Oscar is there, we act normal." "Yes," Ronald said. "Call her." I listened as Albert made the call near the door, lowering his voice just enough to sound concerned. "Rebecca, calm down. I'll check on Oscar now. He's probably at the bar. You know how he gets before big days." He listened, nodded, and ended the call. One last glance around the room. One last breath of danger. Then they left. The door clicked shut, and the silence that followed felt louder than everything that came before it. I did not crawl out immediately. I stayed under that bed for a long time, staring at the carpet like it might explain my life to me. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't even shaking anymore. I was just still. Too still. As though my body had gone numb so my mind could survive what it had heard. My family was not just selfish. They were dangerous. That was the truth settling into my bones. Eventually, I crawled out. My legs nearly gave out when I stood. I sat on the edge of the bed and pressed both hands against my face. The envelope with Vivian's name was still in the room. I picked it up carefully, turned it over, and stared at Rebecca's handwriting. I didn't even need to open it. By then, I already understood enough. This had never been about concern. It had never been about family unity. It had never been about protecting me. It was about control. Money. Access. Power. Fear. I went to the mirror and looked at myself. The man staring back at me looked calm, but his eyes had changed. Something had burned out in them, and something else had come alive. For the first time in years, I wasn't confused. I wasn't trying to explain bad behavior away. I wasn't trying to keep peace. I wasn't trying to be fair to people who had shown me none. "No," I whispered to my reflection. "Not tonight." I was not going to confront them. Not yet. If I confronted them then, they would deny everything. They would cry. They would act offended. They would call me paranoid. They would twist the facts, play the victim, and become more careful. No. I would do something better. I would pretend. I would smile. I would laugh. I would walk into my own wedding like a man who knew absolutely nothing. I would hug Ronald. I would thank Albert. I would let Rebecca touch my face and call me her brother. And while they celebrated their own cleverness, I would build a wall around everything they thought they owned. My children. Vivian. My name. My money. My future. I turned my phone back on. It lit up instantly with missed calls and messages from all of them. Rebecca, Ronald, Albert. Concern, concern, concern. I ignored every single one. Instead, I opened Vivian's contact and stared at her name. I wanted to call her right then. I wanted to tell her to run. I wanted to tell her my family was poison. I wanted to tell her that the man she was marrying had just discovered his life might have been managed like a business deal by the people sitting in the front row tomorrow. But I didn't. Not yet. I needed facts. I needed control. I needed a plan. So I slipped the phone into my pocket, left the room, and headed for the elevator. When those doors closed, I saw myself again in the mirrored wall. Anyone watching me would have thought I was a groom taking a quiet moment before the biggest day of his life. A successful man in a hotel suit, calm and thoughtful. But inside me, something had turned. By the time the elevator reached the lobby, I had made my first real decision. I would become the version of Oscar they believed in. Soft, trusting, predictable. That would be my disguise. The hotel bar was glowing with soft amber light when I stepped out. A few guests sat laughing over drinks. Music played quietly. Glasses clinked. And there they were, Ronald and Albert, standing near the counter like two innocent brothers discussing sports. The second Ronald saw me, his face lit up. "Oscar, there you are." Albert smiled wide. "Rebecca was worried your phone was off." I smiled back. Perfectly. "I needed some quiet," I said. "Tomorrow is a big day." Ronald slapped my shoulder like nothing had happened. "That's my brother, always thinking." If only he knew what I was thinking now. We sat down. A waiter brought drinks. They talked. I listened. I listened the way a detective listens to suspects he already knows are guilty. Ronald spoke about how happy he was for me. Albert spoke about marriage, patience, and partnership like he had become a relationship expert in the last hour. Every word tasted fake. Every smile looked rehearsed. At one point, Albert leaned in and said, "Vivian is lucky. Not many women get a man like you." I took a slow sip of my drink and answered, "I hope she feels safe." The word safe made Ronald's eyes flicker for just a second. It was tiny, but I saw it. That was the thing about waking up. Once you finally see clearly, even a blink can sound like a confession. After a while, I stood. "I need rest." "Of course," Ronald said quickly. "Tomorrow will be long." Albert nodded. "Sleep well, big brother." Big brother. The words almost made me sick. Back in my room, I locked the door and called the one man I trusted more than my own family. My lawyer. He answered on the second ring. "Good evening, Oscar." "I need you tonight." He went quiet immediately. He knew my voice. He knew I was not calling for small talk. "Is everything okay?" "No," I said. "And I need complete discretion." I explained enough for him to understand the danger without giving him every emotional detail. I did not mention the bed. I did not mention how my own brothers had sounded like strangers. But I told him there were documents coming. I told him family members were trying to secure access to my assets after the wedding. I told him my children might be dragged into something ugly. I told him I needed every layer of protection available before morning. He listened. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm and hard. "Oscar, you need to move fast." I know. We talked about everything I should have done years earlier. Isolating personal accounts, restructuring access, activating trusts, changing signatory requirements, freezing certain authorizations, moving assets into structures that could not be touched by emotional pressure in a private room after a wedding. We discussed guardianship clauses, emergency powers, beneficiaries. Then I said the thing that mattered most. If anything happens to me, my boys must be protected first. He did not hesitate. Understood. And Vivian, I added. She must not be left exposed. I'll handle it. When the call ended, I sat in silence for a moment, then checked my phone again. Vivian had sent a message earlier. Are you okay? You've been quiet tonight. I typed, I'm okay. Just thinking. I love you. Then I stopped. I almost added, if anything feels strange tomorrow, don't leave my side. But I deleted it. She deserved one peaceful night, if peace was still possible. Then my mind went to my boys. They were sleeping at Rebecca's house. Rebecca's house. The same sister whose handwriting was on that envelope. The same sister Ronald had just linked to hospital files and manipulation. The same sister they trusted to handle Vivian. I called my head of security immediately. I need 2 men at my sister's house tonight, I said. Is there a problem, sir? Quiet protection only. No noise, no panic. But nobody moves my children anywhere. Nobody. Yes, sir. After that call, I walked to the window and stared out over Lagos. The city lights shimmered in the dark, beautiful and indifferent. Somewhere out there, my family thought tomorrow would lock me in. They thought marriage would trap me into compliance. They thought secrets still owned me. They had no idea I was already moving. My phone buzzed again. Rebecca. Oscar, my son said something strange about Vivian. We need to talk before the wedding. I stared at the message and almost smiled. There it was. The pattern. Small seed, soft concern, urgent timing, family loyalty wrapped around poison. I replied, What did he say? Her answer came quickly. Better to talk in person. It's sensitive. Sensitive. Of course it was. That was how poison is served in families like mine. Not loudly, not with threats, but with lowered voices and worried eyes. I replied, We'll talk in the morning. I need rest. She wrote back, Are you sure? I think it's important. I answered, Tomorrow. Then I put the phone down and leaned back. This was not a movie. In movies, villains look dangerous. Real life is uglier than that. In real life, betrayal wears perfume. It smiles. It prays with you. It hugs your children. It remembers your birthday. It calls manipulation protection and control care. A little later, my lawyer called back. Everything is moving, he said. Your personal holdings will be isolated before morning. The trust will be active before noon. Your children will be the primary beneficiaries. I closed my eyes. For the first time that night, I felt something close to relief. Good, I said. And make sure any documents brought to me tomorrow are reviewed before I touch a pen. Done. When we hung up, there was a knock on my door. Late. Too late for anything innocent. I walked over quietly and checked through the peephole. Rebecca, standing there alone. Her face looked exactly the way it always looked when she wanted me to trust her. Soft, concerned, patient, wounded by the possibility that I might misunderstand her intentions. I opened the door. Oscar, she said gently, I'm sorry to disturb you. What's wrong? She came in, sat down in the chair like she belonged there, crossed her legs neatly, and sighed. You know I love you. That was how she started. Not with facts, not with clarity, with emotion. Everything I do, she said, is for your good." I nodded and let her continue. "My son overheard Vivian on the phone today. She sounded upset, angry, like she was demanding something." I said nothing. Rebecca leaned forward. "I don't want you to suffer again. You've been through too much already." The performance was almost perfect. Almost. "What exactly did she say?" I asked. Rebecca hesitated, just for a second. Then she said, "Something about documents, money, control." I nearly laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was clumsy. Vivian had never once spoken to me about money like that. Never. If anything, she avoided those conversations unless I brought them up. Rebecca was improvising, and not well enough. Instead of challenging her, I walked to the window and stood there for a moment. Then I turned back and gave her what she expected. "Thank you for telling me." I watched relief spread through her shoulders. She smiled. "I knew you would understand." Oh, I understood. Far more than she realized. She stood to leave, hugged me tightly, and said, "Get some rest. We'll talk more after the wedding." After the wedding. That phrase echoed in my mind after she left. After the wedding, I would sign. After the wedding, Vivian would be isolated. After the wedding, my children could be used. After the wedding, everything would belong to the family again. I locked the door, picked up my phone, and texted Vivian. "No matter what anyone says tomorrow, stay close to me." Her reply came quickly. "I trust you." That sentence did something to me. Because trust, real trust, sounds nothing like control. A little later, my head of security sent another message. "Sir, one of your brothers was seen at your sister's house earlier tonight. He asked several questions about the boys." I sat up straight. Now it was clear. This was bigger than access to money. This was leverage. My sons were not safe from being used. And that realization changed the emotional temperature inside me completely. Up until then, some small part of me had still wanted this to be a misunderstanding, some twisted financial plan that could be undone with documents and exposure. But children change everything. Once children enter the plot, you stop negotiating with reality. You act. I did not sleep that night. I lay on my back staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled sounds of the hotel corridor, footsteps, doors, laughter, room service carts rolling by, as if the world had no idea a war had started in one quiet room. My phone buzzed again near dawn. Rebecca had called the house, asking if the boys were asleep. That was not normal. Not for her. Not at that hour. Panic was creeping into their plan. Maybe they sensed something. Maybe Ronald's suspicion under the bed had left him unsettled. Maybe my refusal to meet Rebecca immediately had made them nervous. Good. Let them be nervous. I sent a direct instruction back to security. No one moves my children. No exceptions. A little later, Ronald called. I answered on purpose. His voice was warm. Too warm. "Oscar, you disappeared again." I was resting. "Good. Tomorrow is important. We need you sharp." We. There it was again. "Rebecca said she spoke with you," he added casually. "She was worried," I said. "You know how she is," he replied. "Always caring too much." Always caring too much. That almost made me laugh. Then, after a small pause, he asked, "You trust us, right?" That question hit the center of me. Because innocent people don't need to ask for trust when trust is already there. People ask for trust when they're checking whether the lock is still holding. I answered softly, "You're my family." He laughed with relief. Exactly. After the call, I sent a message to the family group chat. "Good night, everyone. Tomorrow will be beautiful. Thank you all for standing by me." Replies rushed in almost immediately. Prayer emojis from Rebecca, a red heart from Ronald. "Proud of you, big brother," from Albert. I stared at the screen for a long time. That is what betrayal looks like in real life. Polite, loving, clean. Morning came fast. Too fast. The hotel was alive with movement before I was ready for it. Phones buzzing, staff rushing, garment bags moving through hallways, decorations being checked, cars coming and going, the kind of beautiful chaos weddings create. I showered, dressed, and put on the face everyone expected to see. The calm groom, grateful and composed. Downstairs, the atmosphere was almost festive enough to make me forget for one dangerous second. The smell of food, soft music, smiling staff, relatives greeting one another, camera flashes, laughter. Rebecca hugged me first. "You look peaceful," she said. "I am," I answered. Ronald shook my hand firmly. "Today changes everything." "Yes," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "It does." Albert leaned in and said, "After the ceremony, there are a few things we need you to sign. Nothing serious." I nodded with a small smile. "After the ceremony," I said. Then Vivian arrived, and for the first time since the night before, the noise in my head went quiet. She looked beautiful, not in a loud, dramatic way, but in the kind of way that steadies a man. Graceful, calm, self-possessed. There was no greed in her face, no fear, no game. Just trust, warmth, and love. I leaned close to her and whispered, "Stay beside me today." She looked at me for half a second, searching my eyes, then nodded. No questions, just trust. The ceremony began. Vows were spoken. Smiles were exchanged. Applause rose around us. To everyone watching, it was a perfect Lagos wedding. A joyful union. Two families celebrating love. A successful man beginning again after pain. But beneath my smile, my mind was alert. Watching. Listening. Waiting. And somewhere in the middle of all that beauty, I realized something. Some of the most dangerous battles happen in rooms full of flowers. After the ceremony, guests drifted toward the reception area. Music picked up. People laughed. Photographers moved around us. Then Ronald touched my arm. "Come with us for a second." Albert was already beside him. Rebecca appeared ahead of us, walking toward a smaller private lounge off the main hall. And just like that, the moment I had been waiting for arrived. Inside the lounge, Rebecca closed the door. Ronald smiled and placed a folder on the table. "Just a few documents," he said. "Family protection," Albert added. "Standard procedure." Rebecca gave me that soft, careful look again. "We only want what's best for you." I opened the folder slowly. My blood went cold. The first page was a document transferring broad control of my assets into a family trust structure that would effectively place major decisions outside my direct control. I turned the next page. There were clauses about joint oversight. Then I saw something that made my jaw tighten. My children. A guardianship provision. And beside it, wording that suggested control could move in directions I had never agreed to. under circumstances defined by people other than me. I lifted my head and looked at them. All three were smiling, waiting, watching. And in that exact moment, I understood something even more chilling than what I had heard the night before. This wasn't just greed. This was an ambush built with familiarity. A trap designed by people who knew my timing, my pressure points, my public image, my guilt, my love, my children, and the fact that weddings make people emotional and careless. If I made the wrong move in that room, I could lose everything. Ronald pushed a pen toward me. "Let's just take care of it now so you can enjoy the rest of your day." Albert nodded. "No stress, no pressure." No pressure. I almost admired the shamelessness of it. I flipped another page slowly, giving myself time. Their confidence was visible now. They thought they had already won. They thought the ceremony had weakened me. They thought I was exactly the same man who had always chosen peace over confrontation. That was their final mistake. I placed the folder down gently and looked at Ronald first. "You know," I said, "it's funny." The room changed. Not dramatically, just slightly. A subtle tightening in the air. Ronald smiled uncertainly. "What's funny?" "That every single one of you keeps saying this is for my protection." Rebecca's face softened, ready for performance. "Oscar," I raised a hand, not aggressively, calmly. And that calm unsettled them more than anger would have. "I spent years protecting all of you," I said. "Your rent, your cars, your businesses, your emergencies, your comfort. I protected your pride. I protected your mistakes. I protected this family, even when it nearly broke me." No one interrupted. Albert shifted his weight. Ronald's smile was gone now. Rebecca tried first. "We know how much you've done. That's exactly why we're helping you now." Helping. There was that word again. I nodded slowly, as if considering it. Then I said, "Last night, I learned something important." And that sentence hit them like a crack of thunder. Ronald's eyes narrowed instantly. Albert went still. Rebecca's mouth parted slightly, but no words came out. I let the silence breathe. Then I looked straight at Ronald and said, "You should never have come back into my room." No one moved. For a moment, it was as if the whole world held its breath with them. Ronald recovered first. "I don't know what you mean." Of course he said that. Men like Ronald always deny the truth before they measure how much of it you know. I smiled faintly. "That's the problem," I said. "You always think denial is enough." Rebecca stepped forward. "Oscar, if this is stress talking..." "No," I said quietly. "This is clarity talking." And before anyone could reshape the conversation, my phone buzzed. I took it out, glanced at the message from my lawyer, and looked back up. "Everything is secured. Perfect timing." I slipped the phone away and pushed the folder back across the table. "I won't be signing anything today." Albert's voice hardened immediately. "Oscar, don't be dramatic." That word, dramatic. It's what manipulators call your pain when they no longer control the script. I turned to him. "Dramatic? You forged emotional emergencies around my life for years. You used my first marriage. You used my children. You used my trust. And now you bring documents to my wedding and call me dramatic? Rebecca's face changed then. The softness cracked. Be careful what you're accusing people of. There she was, the real Rebecca, cold beneath the kindness. I looked at her and said, I am being careful. That's why none of you will ever touch another piece of my life again. Ronald laughed, but it came out tight. You have no proof. I stepped closer to the table and lowered my voice. That confidence you have? It's outdated. For the first time, fear touched his face. Just a little, but it was there. Albert tried one last tactic. Think about what you're doing. This is your wedding day. Do you really want to embarrass yourself? Do you really want to damage your family over suspicion? I answered him without hesitation. No. I'm choosing not to let my family damage me any further. Then I opened the lounge door. Outside, music was still playing. Guests were still celebrating. The world had not stopped. And somehow, that made the moment even more powerful. Because life was moving forward, whether they liked it or not. Before stepping out, I turned back and said one final thing. If any of you come near my children, my wife, or my accounts again, I won't handle it as family. I'll handle it properly. Then I walked out. I expected shouting behind me, panic, pleading, anger. But none came. Because predators are most dangerous when they believe you are weak, and most silent when they realize you are not. Vivian was waiting just outside, eyes full of questions. I took her hand. Come with me, I said. She didn't ask why. We walked straight past the music, past the smiling relatives, past the cameras, and into a quieter corridor where no one else could hear us. Then, finally, I told her enough. Not everything. Not yet. But enough. Her face did not collapse in panic the way my family would have expected. She listened. She absorbed it. She held my hand tighter and asked the only question that mattered. What do we do now? We. That word healed something in me that had been torn open the night before. I looked at her and said, now we live differently. And if you made it this far, then you already know this wasn't just a story about money. It was a story about betrayal, awakening, and the moment a man realizes that love without boundaries becomes a prison. So before you go, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Oscar's place? Because the truth is, some people don't lose their family in a single day. They lose them slowly, one manipulation at a time, until one night they hear the truth so clearly they can never unhear it again. As for me, that wedding still happened, but not in the way they planned. The smiling photographs from that day don't show the war that was happening underneath. They don't show the documents waiting in a private lounge. They don't show the years of guilt being weaponized. They don't show the moment I stopped being easy to control. What those pictures show is a man standing upright beside a woman who actually loved him, while 3 people in the background began to understand that their access was over. The days after the wedding were ugly. Not publicly at first, privately. Calls, messages, explanations, gaslighting, tears, spiritual language, family pressure. Everything you would expect when people realize the door they have been using for years is finally locked. Ronald said I had misunderstood, Albert said I was being influenced. Rebecca cried and said she had only ever tried to protect me. But once you hear the machinery behind the curtain, the magic never works the same way again. I reviewed old patterns, old financial requests, old arguments, old timing, old emotional ambushes. I started seeing years with new eyes. Some truths came quickly, others took time. Some things were worse than I imagined. Some were exactly as ugly as I feared. As for the secret they used against me, that truth came in layers too. Painful ones. But by then, I had learned something I wish I had known much earlier. No truth, however painful, is more dangerous than living in the hands of people who profit from your ignorance. So I faced it. Not because I was fearless, but because I was finally more afraid of remaining blind than I was of being hurt. My boys stayed with me more after that. Not because I wanted revenge, not because I wanted to punish anyone, but because I had learned that access is a privilege, not a right, even when blood is involved. Vivian stood by me through all of it, quietly, steadily, the same way she had stood beside me at the altar. And in the end, that was how I knew I had not made a mistake choosing her. Because fake love gets louder when control is threatened. Real love gets steadier. That night under the bed, I thought my life was ending. In truth, something else was ending. My blindness, my guilt-driven obedience, my confusion, my habit of calling exploitation by softer names just to keep the peace. People talk a lot about betrayal, but they rarely talk about the humiliation of realizing how long it was happening before you saw it. That part is hard, harder than anger sometimes, because anger is hot. Humiliation is quiet. It sits with you. It asks how you missed what was right in front of you. It makes you replay years in your head. But healing starts where denial ends, and mine started under a hotel bed, on the night before my wedding, with my face pressed into a carpet and my own brothers laughing about the man they thought would never wake up. They were wrong. I woke up. And once a man truly wakes up, he may still grieve, he may still hurt, he may still shake. But he does not go back to sleep for anyone.